Download Whiskey Hell Podcast. We call attention to the mainstream media narratives weekly in hopes that you'll have fun with how ridiculous the news really is. We don't want to change your mind. We just want to give you perspective so that you can choose more wisely and be more aware. Couple that with great craft beer, hilarious stories, deep thoughts, and real conversations. We know you're going to enjoy it. Download Whiskey Hell Podcast anywhere you find outstanding shows.
You are listening to a Fonz Media Network production.
Take my eyes open to force reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? Hush. Shh.
Kamala. That's all you see and hear. The media has gotten behind her at a level I have not seen in quite some time, that not really anyone has seen in a long time. They're all in lockstep in supporting Kamala. In fact, I was completely enjoying my cigar, smoking a Padron 1964 anniversary series with Maduro wrapper, an amazing cigar, and having a nice Italian blend coffee. Of course, scrolling social media like most of us do just to see what's going on out there. And I swear, my X feed has turned into nothing but Democrat propaganda and Kamala Harris endorsements and media bites and clips and pics and everything else that you can say about what the media can throw at you in regard to Kamala Harris. They're doing their best to make sure that she is the only thing on your mind when it comes to the presidential election. And I said on my previous show that she didn't have really much to run on. And in fact, I did say, and I will own up to saying, that we should be ready for a campaign based on skin color and being a woman. And I got into trouble for saying that. Which is funny because when I said that, alongside not just me saying that, CNN and other news outlets were very happy to say, we have the opportunity. And it would be so great if we actually had the first, wait for it, black woman president. So if I offended you in your sensitive ears in me saying the obvious about how they were going to try to drive this campaign home, I guess I should apologize to you. But then you should also ask for the same apologies from CNN, MSN, and every other liberal-leaning media outlet out there for saying just the same. Because wording does matter. And all I did was state the obvious. And in fact, not just the news media outlets also supported what I said, but Kamala Harris herself had made comments about being a black woman. Moving forward here, we know that she is the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. She's not there yet. The DNC is August 19th. We got to wait till it's signed, sealed, and delivered, as they say. And she's not yet the actual Democratic presidential party nominee. Although according to the media and, as it relates to what the public sees, everyone's behind her. Everybody supports her. Everybody wants Kamala Harris, except for, well, when you fact check that statement and see videos and pictures of her campaigns and the abysmal turnouts that they've had. But that doesn't matter because, it's all about Kamala Harris and winning democracy, saving America, and hell, along with that, the entire world. Because we know that if she doesn't win, we're fucked. Although when you challenge anybody to basically explain how it was their life was so horrible when President Trump was the president, they can't really think of anything specific. In fact, Americans went on about their lives. Blacks were not thrown back into slavery. School children weren't torn from their families and thrown into protective services because their birth parents wouldn't use the correct pronouns. That didn't happen under Trump. No, not at all. I guess they couldn't even come to grips with the reality that immigration was lower, crime was lower, the economy was better. But none of that matters because, well, Trump's just a crazy white guy. And that's what really matters. We don't want no more crazy white guys in office. We need a strong black woman. I'm going to make it very clear. I personally have no problem whatsoever with a strong woman as president, regardless of skin tone. I can care less. If a woman is strong and competent and can prove that they could take on the reins of this great nation and lead us to become a better version of ourselves, I am fully in support of that. Absolutely. I have no problem as a man supporting a strong woman to run this country. But the options that we have presented to us are that being of presumptive presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. And on the other side, we have former President Trump. And that's what we got because my pick, Tulsi Gabbard, did not run. But she wouldn't have gotten the nominee anyway because Trump is just, well, he's the guy when it comes to the Republican Party. That's just all there is to it. Moving on to the statements of being a black woman and only supporting Kamala Harris because she is a black woman, I think people are getting tired of that because they're seeing through the bullshit. They really are. And in fact, even the campaign itself, whoever's running Kamala Harris's campaign, they've kind of gotten away from that. I have not seen that as much as I used to. Here's a clip that I need to play. There have been reports of all these large, giant Zoom meetings of black people and women and people of color coming together on Zoom, raising millions and millions and millions of dollars in support of Kamala Harris. But there's an individual, Anton Daniels, that sets the record straight in one of these meetings because it seems that the only reason they really want to vote for Kamala is because she was black. I'm not the only one saying it. In fact, I don't want to say it, and I don't want to believe it, but that's what's going on. What I love about this clip is Anton Daniels. By the way, I want you all to know, because you can't see this, we're just audio only. Everybody on this call, the pictures that I can see in this video, they're all black people. They're all Americans. They're all black. It looks like there's one white individual in the corner over here, but everybody seems to be black. So that's important for you to know when I play this clip and you listen to what's happening here and what's being said. Also, what I like what Anton does is he lays out Kamala Harris's esteemed achievements, the same ones that I spoke about in a previous episode. But I think you should hear it from a black American who is concerned about his country and sets the record straight. And I think this speaks volumes for how people really feel.
Vote for? Let me ask you a question. Would you vote for?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm going to just be real honest with this. She's a black woman.
Yeah.
Because they skin folk, not Kim folk.
I think it goes back to what somebody was saying, where it's not voting for someone, but majority will vote for somebody else just.
Hold on. Let me line this out.
I think majority.
Is it only because she a black woman?
Yeah.
Do you not see how that's a bad idea?
Elaborate.
Okay, so we're in 3 proxy wars with some of the most powerful leaders in the world. She failed at the border, in which we have an estimation of 15 to 20 million people illegally into this country. That is literally overtaking and bankrupting Chicago, to the tune of over $400 million per year, and they are in a deficit. Oakland is going out of business. San Francisco, ditto. California, $65 billion deficit. New York, they're literally cutting trash, in which they are the rattiest, dirtiest city, and they've taken up resources as far as free healthcare, free hotels to the tune of $600 a day. They're literally taking over your schools. Your taxpayer dollars are going to fund the migrant crisis. She was supposed to be in charge of this. We have a failing economy. Every single day I see people getting on the internet talking about $30 an hour is the new minimum wage because inflation is fucking out of control. At one point, it was at almost 10%, depending on what city that you in. She has no policy, no record to stand on. One of the biggest things that she did in her career was lock up more black men than ever before. But we sitting here and vote her in office on identity politics. The very person that she was under as far as the president of the United States of America, she called him racist during a debate, which shows you how fake she is. And the only thing that we can stand on from a policy perspective is whether or not she's black and she's a woman. We did that during the Obama administration, and he didn't do anything for black people. As a matter of fact, y'all complain because the only person that he did, or the only group of people that he really stood for is the alphabet community, and that's his landmark thing that he's still standing on today. So the only thing that we have to stand on is identity politics. That shit didn't work with Tiffany Henyard in Dolton, Illinois. It didn't work with Karen Bass. It didn't work with Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. It didn't work with Brandon Johnson that then took over her position in Chicago. It didn't work with Andre Dickens in Atlanta. It didn't work with Eric Adams in New York. It doesn't work across the country. Every single Democratic city is a hellhole. And we sitting here talking about identity politics?
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, Anton. This is a strong, intelligent, black American man who is telling it like it is. Telling everybody that, hey, you know what? Identity politics doesn't work. Because guess what? We have to elect those who actually stand for something, who will actually deliver on their promises, that will actually do something for this great country we call the United States of America. Anton was telling his fellow cohorts on this meeting that, yes, we're black, and yes, it matters that we have someone who looks out for our interests, but it hasn't happened. Every time they have voted based on identity politics, it has backfired and left them in a worse position. And I wish that wasn't so, to be quite honest. I really do. Because I believe black America needs someone who's going to have their back and really look out for what they believe in and for the issues that they deal with on a daily. But unfortunately, their own representatives that they vote for who happen to be black just abandon them and leave them out in the cold. They just use them to get the votes. And Anton lays it down, says it as well as anyone can. And I don't really have to say more because, Anton, I'm going to give you another horn. There you go. You did it, man. Thank you so much for saying that. You said what so many can't say, especially someone like me who may be white or someone who may be brown, but not exactly black. But you were not afraid to tell it like it is. And to be quite honest, as I said earlier, no one has a problem with a strong black woman being president. But the problem here is Kamala is not that person, period. Now, to that point, I'm going to dispel a little bit of a myth here where everyone is saying, and I don't like using this acronym. I don't like saying anything, like DEI. But the rumor was out there and the rhetoric was being pushed that Kamala was nothing but a DEI hire. And that's horrible. I understand that is a horrible thing to say about somebody. You should be hired based on your merit, based on your experience, your qualifications, and who you are as a person. But I have a quote here, and I'm going to tell you, this was very hard to find because Google is literally going out there and wiping out evidence of anything that has to do with why Kamala Harris was picked as VP. There's a lot out there, and I'm going to get to this, that has been said by Joe Biden, by media outlets, appointing Kamala Harris the border czar, which apparently she never was. It's getting harder to find those articles and videos. In fact, I tried to get a video earlier for this show where Joe Biden is literally up there giving a speech and addressing the people, where he literally appoints Kamala Harris the border czar. But again, I'm going to get to that here in a bit. Now, let me get back to the DEI accusations. I have a quote, and again, this was hard to find. I had to literally go on browsers that were not Google, put on my VPN before this thing would pull up, because I remember this. And I used to have this archived, but I couldn't find it, but I eventually did. This was a CNN article. And get this, people, the CNN article is literally titled, "Biden says he would prefer a person of color or a woman as his vice president." That is the title of the damn article, and this was August 30th, 2019. Here's a direct quote. This is a direct quote from Joe Biden to CNN. "Whomever I pick, preferably, it will be someone who was of color and or a different gender. But I'm not making that commitment until I know that the person I'm dealing with I can completely and thoroughly trust as authentic and on the same page as me." That, my friends, was a direct quote from Joe Biden from an article to CNN titled, "Biden says he would prefer a person of color or a woman as his vice president," August 30th, 2019. Tell me again how she wasn't picked on the basis of being a woman and a person of color to be the VP. Please, by all means, tell me that didn't happen. Tell me that wasn't the case. I don't want to believe that was the case. I would hope that our president would be, choosing a VP based on someone who can actually help guide them, help relieve some of the pressures of running the country, and be on the same page as the president himself. But no, Biden literally said he would prefer whoever it was just to basically be a different skin tone and be a different gender. That's it. Regardless of all that, the spin from the Democratic Party and from the media themselves that is just spewing out from their evil, decrepit mouths to support Kamala, not just support, but to twist your view of her and how she is the next best thing since sliced bread, as they say. Kamala Harris, I'm going to remind everybody, back in 2020, when she was running for president, couldn't even get support from her own state of California. In fact, she got less, or maybe 1% of the vote, 1% of the support of the vote. That's it. That's all she got. Nobody wanted her. Nobody cared. She could have stayed in Congress, but no. As a president, nobody saw the value. Nobody saw the benefit of having her step up to the plate and lead the country. But now, suddenly, she's the greatest thing ever. She's got the experience. And you're right, she has the experience as a politician. There are plenty of politicians, though, who, run for the presidency. It's very rare that someone who hasn't been a politician at all has ran for the presidency. They've all had political experience in some capacity. So now that I even the playing field there and, just crumbled that little thing up and threw it out the window, let's focus back on the issues. Let's just go ahead and focus on her responsibilities. And who better to believe in terms of spin, the good old Pete Buttigieg, that good old nugget from the Democratic Party. Here he is on an interview from Fox News Sunday. And they're discussing VP Harris's roles in the admin's border policy, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a fuck? But listen to this. Good old Peter Buttigieg.
Let's get real. Border crossings are down in the wake of President Biden's executive actions that he took after Congress failed to act.
So he could have taken action.
He wanted Congress to resolve that because that would have been more durable. But when Trump came in, talked Republicans out of their own bipartisan project because he didn't want the issue to get better. Remember, the worse things are at the border, the better things get for Donald Trump. So he has a vested interest in it remaining chaotic down there. I think this also helps to explain why he didn't exactly conclusively solve it when it was his turn. But I saw something else really important happening at the Republican National Convention on the border and the talk about immigration, which we all recognize as a problem, which is they tried to paint this narrative that if you live somewhere far from the border and immigration hasn't affected you personally, you need to think that immigration is a driver of crime. That was the
All right, I'm going to stop that there, and we're going to get into the crime part of what Buttigieg is going to go into a bit later. But first, let's discuss Trump's failures when it came to the border and how Trump didn't want to secure the border and how he dropped the ball. Let's talk about that. In fact, I'm not even going to go that deep. I'm just going to read some headlines. How about some headlines? We know we love headlines from the beloved media. Here we go. This is Vox. This article and report from January 15th of not 2024, 2019. Why Democrats won't negotiate with Trump on the wall, referring to the border wall. ABC News, December 23rd, 2018. Even earlier, Democrats will not agree to any funding of the U.S.-Mexico border. Well, there's two. I think we might be seeing a pattern here. Let me see. CNN, 2019. Democratic lawmakers reject Trump's latest immigration policies. Okay. Well, there's three. You want me to keep going? Because so far there's a pattern here developing of the Democrats when President Trump was in office of not supporting a secure border whatsoever. Not at all. In fact, would not come into an agreement to help secure this country whatsoever. But then fast forward to 2024, they want to flip that script and say, it's the Republicans who are not passing, the bill we need to secure this border. They're the ones who are going against the Democratic Party, not wanting to be bipartisan whatsoever and are putting the country at risk, really. Because I remember when Biden came into office and every single thing that Trump did that actually kept the border secure as best as he could without the Democratic support, he repealed. And guess what happened? It got fucking worse. The border was out of control. And even though this may be a myth, Kamala Harris was never the border czar. It was never her responsibility. Is that so? Really? Well, if it was never her responsibility, then please answer why it is back in 2021, 2022, so many were calling for Kamala Harris, the border czar, to be replaced and to step down from the position of, border czar. November 17th, 2021, I found this from cnnnews.com. Not quite sure who they are, but, they do cite a lot of other news outlets and have quotes in here. Longtime Texas congressman representing a district along the U.S.-Mexico border said he has moved on from Vice President Kamala Harris when it comes to illegal immigration and now wishes the U.S. had a proper border czar. He says, I wish we had a border czar. We've had border czars under different administrations, he added. Though the media has put a lot of focus on the vice president, but with all due respect, she was given that title. I don't think she's, with all due respect, put the effort in there. We've got to look at other folks that have the expertise on that. This is Representative Queller from Texas. This was, again, dated November 17th, 2021. Funny, referring to her as the border czar, referring to the fact that she was appointed that position and that she needs to be replaced as the border czar, and we need someone who actually looks out for the border. Here's another one. Independent Chronicle. Here we go. This was dated May 13th, 2021. Headline, Arizona AG urges Biden to remove Kamala Harris as, funny, says border czar. But she was never the border czar, right? But yet everybody's calling her to be removed as the border czar. Now that is very interesting. This goes on to read, Arizona's Attorney General Mark Brnovich wrote a scathing letter to President Biden urging him to replace Kamala Harris as the border czar. He goes on to say, her response to the border crisis has been absolutely abysmal, so I am requesting that she be replaced, Brnovich wrote. We are now nearly 50 days into her appointment, and Vice President Harris has shown little interest in observing what is happening along the southern border and has failed to articulate any plan to deal with the devastating effects of this crisis. Brnovich pointed to the 178,600 apprehensions at the border in April. Now, this was April of 2021, by the way. It goes on to read, rising 3% from March as evidence of the worsening situation. He further goes on to say, the latest apprehension numbers from April show that the things are getting worse, and we do not yet know the full extent of the dangerous people and drugs crossing into our communities. Mr. President, we can not afford another day, week, or month of apathy and inaction by any official in your administration charged with upholding federal immigration laws and ensuring public safety, Brnovich writes. So, 2021, again, referring to Kamala as the border czar and needing to be removed as such. And here's another one, November 30th, 2022. This is from Conservative Brief, titled, Republicans Push for Kamala Harris to be, you guessed it, removed as border czar. Are you getting tired of hearing me say that she was the border czar? Because I'm not. I'm going to drive this home. And in fact, I've only read a few. And I think I'll stop after this third one. I don't want to, well, maybe not. Let me just get through this a little bit. This goes on to read, fed up Republicans are calling for Vice Presidential Kamala Harris to be removed from her position as the border czar. It just doesn't stop, does it? It just doesn't stop from 21 and 22. And guess what? The stats were back then. This is in the same article. A new report found that under her tutelage as the border czar, a new report found that the number of illegal immigrants crossing at the U.S.-Mexico border for fiscal year 2022 topped 2.76 million, breaking the previous annual record by more than 1 million, according to the Customs and Border Protection data. And then there is a ton of data later, which I have gone over, I can't even tell you how many times, and just go to the Customs and Border Patrol website and you will find everything there you need to know about President Biden's border crisis situation. And just remember, Kamala Harris is the border czar. She's the border czar. Let me see. Do I have one more? There's another article. Well, this is recent. This is January 2024. Now, this is before she started running for president because of the removal of Joe Biden, which is, I still say is highly suspect, but whatever. This is where we're at. But as of January 26, 2024, here's another one from lifenews.com. Kamala Harris was supposed to be the border czar, but instead she's the abortion cheerleader. That was a little harsh. Again, another article. So I just pointed out countless, well, not countless, let's say 4 or 5 different media outlets that all point to representatives and organizations calling for her removal as the border czar. And this was from between 21 and 22 when she was appointed the border czar. So tell me again, CNN, MSN, how it is that she's not the border czar, that the situation we are in with the horrendous influx of illegal, and I would say illegal immigrants, not legal, but illegal immigrants, how she's not responsible for that, how we're supposed to just forget about the fact that it was her job to find a solution and to get down to the bottom of why we are dealing with this crazy influx of illegal immigrants into the United States of America. She did not do anything. She just sat there idly. In fact, can anyone recall under Biden's presidency when she has done anything whatsoever publicly, and giving speeches or anything? I mean, you rarely saw her outside of maybe an appearance on The View or, maybe a little thing she did with Oprah. But outside of those two things, what has she ever done? She sat idly by, just existing, just being I hate to say it, but a mouth breather, just sucking the air out of the room, doing nothing as a vice president. Doesn't come close to any other vice president that we've seen. She was non-existent. What the fuck was the point of her being there? As a just in case? as a maybe? Or was she literally the DEI hire that everybody is saying she wasn't? Maybe she was literally just the black woman they needed to push the votes over the edge. And I know that nobody wants to hear that. And I know, go ahead, bring it all in, sling them insults again at me. You're just a racist. No, I'm not a racist. I'm calling it as it is. I've read the quotes from Joe Biden stating the same thing. Sorry to disappoint, but your supreme leader, Joe Biden, literally said on record that is what he was looking for in a VP. Now let's go ahead and turn back to that good old Pete Buttigieg interview that I stopped. And let's go to the second part where we're talking about crime. Let me see. Hopefully this plays where I need it to. And here we go.
Real message. Immigration leads to crime.
Well, there are blue state governors and mayors who say every state is a border state now. That's Democrats.
Yeah, and now they're saying, but what the false message of the RNC was that this is leading to an increase in crime.
Well,
and I think it's really important that we talk about
have
crime.
Been very high profile about people.
Of course,
had they not been in this country
cases,
illegally,
but this is my
people
point,
would still
right?
be alive.
Trying to make people think that crime is up when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network. So if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great. So if you look this up at home, you will know that crime went down under Biden and crime went up under Trump. And I think the violent crime, for sure. So I think the really important thing to ask is, why would America want to go back to the higher crime that we experienced under Donald Trump?
You're right there, Pete. Why would we want to go back to higher crime? It's a good question, only if what you were saying was actually true, because crime was not higher under Donald Trump. And in fact, I just read a bit of data that showed that even illegal immigration was lower. And I have more to offer if anyone's interested. Just, if you really want that info and you can't find it, go ahead and email me, worldablaze@fontsmedia.com, FONTES media.com, and I'll be happy to send you what I have on what I found. If you just don't have the patience to look for it for yourself, I'll do my best to get it to you. But getting back to good old Peter Buttigieg and his comments about crime, there's a few other things that happened when it came to crime, the numbers of violent crime and how they're reported. And I was just about to get all of the data that I researched together, and I was going through my notes when I literally came across this video from a TikToker. The account is the older millennial.1, as in the number one little dot like .com. So the older millennial.1. And I decided, I'm going to go ahead and play his video because he just says everything. I'm not sure I can even say it any better. Unfortunately, I don't have visuals, but just hear the guy out. I think you're going to really find this to be useful, especially in rebutting little Pete Buttigieg's big-time spin argument.
If you have one of those idiotic liberal friends who try to tell you that the country's safer under Biden, you're going to want to bookmark this video, because I'm going to go ahead and shit all over that. We've seen a ton of liberal creators try to claim that violent crime has gone down since Biden took office. We even had Rolling Stone write an article about it. They claim that murder has gone down 13%. They claim a 6% overall drop in violent crime, and even a 4% drop in property crime. Now, here's the funny thing. If you were to just look at the numbers from Biden's DOJ, it would appear that they're right. Murder and violent crime have declined under Biden. However, there's a very good reason why those numbers have gone down. And that's because 2 years ago, the DOJ changed the way that local police departments report the crimes to the federal government. Whereas that reporting used to be mandatory, now it's optional. And since it's optional, only 44% of all police departments reported all their crimes. Another 24% partially participated, but 32% of all police agencies didn't report anything, to include the LAPD, the NYPD, Miami Police Department, Chicago Police Department, as well as DC and Baltimore. So if you were wondering why the DOJ's numbers don't seem to match up with what we're seeing in reality, it's because they don't. And here's the most embarrassing part. They haven't accounted for a single crime from the LAPD. They haven't accounted for a single crime from the NYPD. They haven't accounted for a single crime from Miami. They haven't accounted for a single crime from Baltimore or DC. And they haven't accounted for a single crime from Chicago. And they still only managed a 13% decline in murder and a 6% decline in violent crime. Imagine how much murder and violent crime has to be happening everywhere else. When you remove LA, New York, Baltimore, DC, Chicago, and Miami, the numbers only decline a tiny bit. So no, crime isn't down under Biden. And no, violent crime isn't down under Biden. The only thing that's declined is the amount of cities that they're counting. Because the Biden administration has managed to make 32% of some of the most violent cities in this country not count.
So there you have it. And everything that he was talking about is verifiable. And you can go to the appropriate government websites and that data is there. And the fact that the Biden administration went ahead to manipulate the data, the amount of data that was being reported to get a more accurate view of what's going on with violent crimes and crime in America is in and of itself inexcusable. And with that being said, and with this knowledge that we now have, what you just heard, how can we take Kamala Harris serious? How can we take her campaign serious when they try to point out, well, crime was lower under, Biden's administration, which she is obviously tied to at the hip, than under Trump? And that is now complete bullshit, because it wasn't. So thus far in this episode, we've already dispelled the myth that being a black woman is the correct reason to vote for Kamala Harris. We've already dispelled the myth that she was never the border czar, which is bullshit. We dispelled the myth that she was a DEI hire, and I know that in and of itself, coming from my mouth, may be sounding a little racist, but to be quite honest, I read the quote from Joe Biden himself. I'm sorry. That is the fucking reason. And we already dispelled the myth that she actually takes responsibility for her actions and her bad policies, because she hasn't and she doesn't. In fact, the first video I played, where it was Anton Daniels explained to everybody why just voting for her because she was a black woman was not the right move. He literally laid out for everybody the accomplishments, the lack of accomplishments that she has, and how she would be detrimental to the American people if they voted just off of identity politics. And so there you have it. This was a little bit of an edgy episode. I tried not to be racial, and I'm not. And again, I can care less if it's a black woman who's a president. I really don't care. I just want it to be the right woman. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris is not the right woman. And I'm going to bring up one more thing. While people are saying that Trump is scared to debate Kamala Harris, let's just make this very clear. And I'm going to say something that's a fact. As of this recording, I am going ahead and I'm going to tell you that I'm recording July 28th, 2024. The DNC is August 19th. She has not yet been solidified, counted in, and announced to be the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. So why should Trump debate her? Trump is the Republican nominee. Period. There's no one else. He is already locked in. She is not. The Democrats have nobody at this point to represent their party as the presidential nominee. Now, I'll give Kamala Harris and her people credit. They are campaigning like you wouldn't believe, and she secured some money and some backing. But again, nothing is done until the books have been opened and pen to paper is put down that she is the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. And let's just not forget that witnessing over the last few years, the Democratic Party pretty much eating their own and hanging people out to dry to the benefit of the party and to certain individuals of the party, that we shouldn't hold our breath. Trump's doing the right thing at this point and not debating her. If she is announced to be the Democratic Party nominee for the presidency, then great. Trump needs to go after her and debate her, because every debate he's ever had, he has shown to be highly effective. And I'll admit, she was a prosecutor. She can argue. She can't be entirely that stupid. I know a lot of people don't think she is, but she didn't get where she was by being an idiot. Okay. I mean, you can argue she got where she was, through other illicit activities, but let's not talk about that. Let's just focus on the fact that, yes, she is an intelligent woman. Kamala Harris is an intelligent woman. But even with that, I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome Trump in a debate. It's just not, because she has no policies. She has nothing to stand on, and she doesn't have a record that shows any real accomplishments that benefited the American people. Period. And that's where we're at. Well, that's the show, and I want to thank everybody for supporting World Ablaze. I just want to tell everybody that we have recently switched hosts, and due to our numbers and our size and how we're growing, you're going to now hear advertisements on the show. It's because of you that's happening, and we're still open to a sponsor, by the way. So if anyone's out there, I would love to have an amazing cigar brand to work with that aligns with our show. I'm just throwing that out there. But regardless, I want to thank you for supporting us and helping us grow. I really do. And please continue to like, to follow, and share World Ablaze with everybody. And I'll see you on the next one.
I wanna taste your content, hold your breath and feel the tension. Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.